In the unseen realm, a battle raged. The forces of light and darkness clashed, not just in the heavens, but in the unfolding history of humanity. At stake was one promise: the coming of a savior, a Messiah who would crush the serpent's head, as foretold from the very beginning. But as time marched, the shadows of this war fell upon the earth. Kings and queens, tyrants and schemers, pawns in a greater struggle, rose with one purpose: to destroy the planet, to stop the promise, to cut off the seed before it could bear fruit. And so, the story of salvation was nearly halted. There was a man who rose from obscurity, clawed his way to power, and built monuments meant to outlive time itself. History remembers him as a king, but behind the crown was a man consumed by fear, shadowed by whispers of betrayal, and a prophecy he could not silence. This is the story of Herod the Great. It is the story of a man at war with destiny itself.
The palace of Herod was a fortress of marble and shadow. Its halls glittered with Roman luxury, yet beneath the gold ran a current of fear, for Herod ruled not with love, but with suspicion. Every whisper was a plot, every shadow a threat. It was into this uneasy court that strangers arrived, foreigners from the east, not soldiers, not emissaries of Rome, but men draped in silks, their eyes fixed on the heavens. The Magi. Their entrance stirred unease. Servants fell silent, guards tightened their grip on their spears, for these men carried a question that would shake the city itself. "Where," they asked, "is he who has been born King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him." The words hung in the air like a dagger. Herod, the crowned monarch of Judea, sat frozen on his throne. King of the Jews? That was his title granted by the Senate in Rome, enforced by blood and steel. Now these strangers spoke of another. A child, a rival. Around him, the court shifted nervously. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath, for the people of Jerusalem knew their king's heart. A heart quick to fear, quicker still to rage. But Herod forced a smile, hiding the storm within. He asked the Magi questions, feigning curiosity. Yet beneath his jeweled crown, old memories stirred memories of where he had come from. For Herod knew that his throne had always been fragile. The people never fully embraced him. He knew what the people whispered, that he was not of the line of David, not even fully of Israel. Their songs, their prayers, their prophecies, they belonged to another line, another promise. And Herod knew why. His roots were not in Jacob. His blood was Edomite, descended from Esau, Jacob's ancient rival. His throne, though gilded, was fragile. And now, a prophecy threatened to shatter it. Herod did not wait. At once, he summoned the chief priests and scribes of the people, the guardians of the sacred scrolls. His voice was sharp, urgent.
"Where is the Messiah to be born?"
They unrolled the parchments, their fingers trembling as they spoke the words of the prophet Micah. "In Bethlehem of Judea, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." The name hung in the air: Bethlehem, a small village just 6 miles from his throne, and now the center of Herod's darkest fears. Before Herod could decide how to strike, before his rage could find a target, his mind was dragged backward into the story of his rise. Herod sat in silence as the Magi's words echoed through the marble hall. Born King of the Jews. The courtiers shifted uneasily, watching their master's face. Behind the jeweled crown and forced smile, something darker stirred. Centuries earlier, the story of two brothers had carved itself into history. Jacob and Esau, one chosen, the other passed over. From Jacob came Israel, the covenant people of God. From Esau came Edom, a people bound in restless opposition. Again and again their paths clashed. Edom resisted Israel in the wilderness. Edom rejoiced when Jerusalem fell. The memory of that rivalry was etched deep into Jewish identity. Jacob beloved, Esau rejected. Herod carried that legacy in his veins. He was Edomian, an Edomite. To the devout, his blood was tainted with the bitterness of Esau, and that suspicion would haunt him all his life. But fate and Rome would turn that curse into an opportunity. Long before Herod, Judea had risen against its oppressors. In 167 BCE, the Maccabees led a revolt against the Seleucid Empire foreign rulers who sought to crush Jewish faith under the weight of idolatry. Out of that uprising came the Hasmonean dynasty, a priestly family who became kings. They restored the temple, reclaimed independence, and for the first time in centuries, Judea was sovereign. Their victory is remembered still in Hanukkah, the festival of lights. But the Hasmoneans were not satisfied with borders alone. They expanded their territory, and in their zeal, they forced entire peoples to convert, including the Idumeans of Edom. Among those forcibly drawn into Judaism was the family of Antipater, the man who would become Herod's father. The conversion did not erase suspicion. To the Jews, Idumeans were never fully brothers. They were outsiders, draped in borrowed faith. And yet, that act of forced assimilation planted the seed of Herod's eventual rise. When Rome's shadow stretched over Judea, Antipater knew resistance was death. So when Pompey the Great marched into Jerusalem in 63 BCE, ending the Hasmonean dynasty's independence, Antipater bent the knee without hesitation. It was a move born not of loyalty, but survival. Rome rewarded him. They needed local allies to stabilize their new province, and Antipater proved invaluable. Soon, he held authority as a Roman administrator, walking the fine line between Jewish tradition and Roman rule. But power bought through foreign favor breeds resentment. To the Jews, Antipater was a collaborator, a traitor, and this stain would pass to his son. Herod inherited more than his father's position. He inherited his cunning. But where Antipater had survived by subtlety, Herod thrived by force. From a young age, he proved himself ruthless, a commander willing to spill blood without hesitation. The Romans noticed. They saw in him what they prized: strength, efficiency, obedience to their empire. Yet even as Herod gained Roman trust, the Jews looked at him with suspicion. His Idumean blood made him a pretender. His allegiance to Rome made him a puppet. He was rising, but he was rising on a foundation of sand. Rome, ever pragmatic, wanted stability, not chaos. And when they looked across the fractured land, they saw one man capable of ruling with iron discipline: Herod. In 40 BCE, the Roman Senate declared him King of the Jews. The title was a cruel irony. Herod, an Edomite, now bore the crown of David's line. But the crown was not yet his in reality. To claim it, he had to fight. He marched on Jerusalem with Roman legions at his side, stormed the city, and crushed the last remnants of the Hasmonean dynasty. Blood paved his path to power. And when he finally sat on the throne, Judea bowed not out of devotion, but out of fear. Herod the Great was born, builder of cities, master of intrigue, king by Rome's decree. Yet beneath, the whispers never ceased. Herod knew it. He felt it in every prayer uttered for the coming Messiah, in every prophecy recited in the synagogues. The people longed for a true king from the line of David, and so Herod reached for legitimacy the only way he could, through marriage. She was Mariamne, granddaughter of Aristobulus II, the last Hasmonean king before Rome toppled his throne. To the Jewish people, Mariamne's bloodline was pure, priestly, royal. So, by marrying her, Herod sought to graft himself into the sacred tree of Israel's kings. But what Herod saw as salvation, Mariamne saw as a prison. Her beauty enchanted him. Her disdain crushed him. She never forgave the man who had executed her family to claim the crown. What began as passion curdled into obsession. He adorned her with gifts, raised her above his other wives, made her queen of his court. Yet with every gesture, her disdain only grew sharper. Around them, the palace hummed with intrigue. Advisors whispered that Mariamne plotted against him. Courtiers fanned the flames of his insecurity, and Herod listened. The same paranoia that had driven him to slaughter rivals now turned inward, poisoning his own marriage. The questions festered, and Herod, a man who trusted no one, not even himself, did what Herod always did when doubt gnawed at him. He killed. Mariamne was executed on Herod's orders. The court fell silent. The people mourned, and Herod broke. And with Mariamne's death, Herod lost more than love. He severed his last fragile tie to the people he ruled. For the Jews, Mariamne had been a living symbol of their Hasmonean legacy. Her death was the final proof. Herod was no savior king. He was a tyrant. From that moment, suspicion ruled him. He trusted neither wife nor son, neither priest nor general. He filled his courts with spies. He sharpened the axe for anyone who stood too close. Even his own blood was not safe. Every prophecy, every whisper of rebellion, every rumor of a true king gnawed at him. And so, when the Magi arrived with their unsettling question, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews?" it pierced Herod deeper than anyone could see. This was not merely a child. This was the rival king his paranoia had always imagined, the heir the people might rally to, and the Messiah the prophets had promised. Herod had killed brothers. He had killed in-laws. He had killed the wife he adored. But could he kill a prophecy? Herod would try, and in doing so, he would etch his name into history's darkest pages. Herod's smile was thin. His voice dipped in honey. To the Magi he said,
Go, search carefully for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I too may worship him.
But behind that mask of devotion lurked a predator. Herod had no intention of bowing to another king. This was a trap, set with a smile, sharpened by paranoia. The Magi bowed and left, their hearts stirred by the star that had led them across deserts. The star moved ahead, brighter, lower, as if heaven itself bent down to earth. And then it stopped, over a humble home in Bethlehem. Inside, they found the child small, fragile, but carrying a presence that silenced them. They fell to their knees, these men of wisdom and power, laying treasures at his feet. Gold, frankincense, myrrh. It was not the palace of Jerusalem. It was not the throne of Rome. Yet they knew they stood in the presence of the true King of the Jews. They were meant to return to Herod. But that night, as they slept, a warning came: do not go back. So at dawn, they slipped away by another road, the dust of their caravan fading eastward. Herod's trap had been sprung, but the prey was gone. Meanwhile, Joseph woke in a sweat, his dreams still burning in his mind. An angel's voice had spoken. Without hesitation, he gathered Mary and the sleeping infant. Before the sun had risen, the family was gone, vanishing south, toward Egypt, the very land from which Israel's deliverer had once been raised. And in Jerusalem, Herod waited. Days passed, no word, no Magi, no child. The smile fell from his face. The whisper of betrayal grew into a roar inside his mind. He had been tricked by foreigners, by prophecy, by heaven itself. And Herod did what Herod always did when threatened.
Kill them! All of them! Every boy in Bethlehem, 2 years old and under!
He ordered blood. Soldiers obeyed. The village woke to horror, the crack of doors splintering, the clash of steel, the sound of mothers' screams. Infants were torn from arms, their cries cut short by iron blades. Bethlehem became a river of grief. Herod had reached back through history and taken Pharaoh's crown of cruelty for himself. But just as Pharaoh had failed to stop Moses, so Herod failed to stop the Christ. Bethlehem bled, but the child was gone. Herod's soldiers had scoured the town, but the promise of deliverance slipped through their blades. The tyrant had spilled innocent blood, yet he remained empty-handed. The people mourned, and Herod? He could silence voices in the streets, but not the gnawing voice inside his own mind. Years passed, and the king who once strutted in power began to crumble. Herod, the great builder of temples, ally of Rome, ruler of Judea, was now a prisoner of his own paranoia. At last, death crept near. Herod died alone, hated, feared, remembered not for his grandeur, but for his blood. And the bitter irony? The child he tried to kill still lived. The king he feared had outlasted him. Herod's monuments crumbled. His dynasty faded. His name became a warning. But the name of the true king, the child of Bethlehem, was lifted to the ends of the earth. Tyrants die. Their empires fall. But God's deliverance endures.